Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football presented by BKC, BKCW.
Hey, Bobby beat me to the gooder read. Look, I'll just go ahead and start my read. This is how you go to Texas baseball games so people don't know who you are right now.
Hey, I'm just ready for the weekend. I've got my shades on. I'm ready for the weekend. It's been a long week for me. Been up and down, several different places. Got a little cold. Got some stuff going on with the family. I'm ready for the weekend, man. Ready for the weekend.
Hey, you look like Brian Ellis. Did you go in the slap fighting?
That's a good one. All right, so we're presented by BKCW. Thank you all for tuning in this morning. We got definitely have a lot to talk about if we don't get sidetracked here. And we have special guest Peyton Yeager joining us from Fox 4 and DFW here in about 20 minutes. But before all that, guys, Texas back on the field today. Unfortunately, no media viewing window, so you're not going to get that sneak peek. But they are back.
Yeah, they are. And I tell you what's really coming into focus right now from what I'm hearing behind the scenes is the strength of the team. We've talked a lot about it being Quinn Ewers' third year, but I'm being told behind the scenes that the offensive line right now is just, it is one of those positions that they could not be happier about. And they look like they are going to be a real strength. Now, time will tell if they're one of those groups that actually beats everybody, or if everybody has, some people have defensive linemen that are going to beat you. That's just the nature of the position. But if it is a true strength of the team, it's sure starting to sound like one right now, according to people behind the scenes, Jerry. And when we go out there and see them, they look like a strength of the team, but we don't get to see them really work in teamwork, right? And so to hear that from behind the scenes, I think starting off with the offensive line is just a really, really pleasant surprise, or pleasant noise to my ears, I guess is the best way to say it.
I think one good thing for the somebody said Ethan Utley off the board to Tennessee as expected. Yeah, Texas kind of backed off that one. I think it was Tennessee or Texas for Ethan Utley, but Texas saw him more as, a longer term prospect is in terms of an interior guy. Very good, very talented player. But on the offensive line, I think what's really good for Kelvin Banks, Cam Williams, these young tackles is Texas is upgraded and they're older at the edge position. I really think that is a great thing for the Texas offensive line to go against on a daily basis. As a fourth-year Barron Sorrell, third-year Ethan Burke, and some of those younger twitched up guys, Colin Simmons, or a guy that transferred in Trey Moore. It's different looks at edge now than it has been in the past. So I think that's great for the Texas tackles. They're going to be challenged in more and different ways this spring than they have been previous to Texas. I think that accelerates their continued development and really gets them ready for what's in front of them this season in the SEC. So again, I'm hearing great things about the offensive line as well. Look, no games are played yet, but we've talked about it before. One of the areas Texas has done their work on the offensive line is 5-6 years ago. Hayden Conner, no chance you could try him at center, no chance there would be competition. He'd have been locked in. Cole Hudson would have come off an injury. He'd have slid right back in this starting role. Just business as usual. That is where the recruiting on the offensive line, the depth, the talent, the competition is so different than years past, not to mention having a probable first-round pick at left tackle. The whole right side is guys you could say, okay, those guys will probably play. They'll play in the NFL one day, and we'll see what happens at center and left guard as far as those prospects go. But again, I mean, you look at depth at center. When's Texas ever had 3 deep at center? Name the time. I mean, that's where we're at right now.
Another couple of notes from Wednesday's practice that I haven't put out there yet. And a UT boy will like this. I heard Jonte Cook and Matthew Golden both had good practices on Wednesday at receiver as well. So, look, I think that I think we're starting to see, there are 5 practices in. Today is 6. They get going, I believe, at 9 a.m. this morning. They will also be – some of the guys will then go over to the Texas relays, root on some Texas athletes as well as some high school guys. It's a big weekend in Austin from an athletic standpoint. The Texas Relays, if you haven't been since Mike Myers Stadium was built 10, 15 years ago, it's kind of all changed out of DKR into that Mike Myers Stadium. And it is a event to behold. They've done a nice job with that. And so we'll see how everything turns out. But it's going to be a nice weekend in Austin, I think. Good weekend.
Yeah, some recruits on campus as well. A couple of notes there. On Texas Football broke the news yesterday that Kobe Sellers is expected to be on campus for an unofficial visit today. Then there's also Lamont Rogers, which had been reported that he was expected to visit today. I exchanged messages with Lamont Rogers, the four-star offensive tackle from Mesquite Horn. He's not coming in today, rescheduling for a later date in April. Of course, Lamont has a June 14th through 16th official visit to Texas, as does Kobe Sellers, the corner out of Shadow Creek. Kobe Sellers, probably an Oklahoma lean over Texas, headed into the spring. A&M's third, LSU, Georgia, somewhere in the mix. But I really think Oklahoma, Texas battle here for Kobe Sellers out of Shadow Creek, the corner. Terry Joseph in contact constantly. Steve Sarkisian and area recruiter Blake Gideon were by the school in January. So a few little Texas OU battles, one in the Houston area, another in the Houston area is Jonah Williams, by the way, who will be in next weekend from Galveston Ball. So the Houston area is serving up a little Texas OU battles in the secondary this year.
It's interesting. It's not so much A&M. Cortland Guillory in the secondary down there, as well. And then you also have Caleb Chester. They have several Houston area DBs that Texas is in on right now. Jerry, you talked about corners with Kobe Sellers. Who are the corners that Texas is after right now in the recruiting? Because this next month, I mean, it's what, March 29th right now?
Yeah.
The next month is getting ready to be full-on recruiting. Who are the corners right now Texas is truly after? You can stay in state, and then if there's guys out of state, mention them last.
Dorian Brew and Kobe Sellers at the top of that list. Cortland Guillory is more of that versatile DB that could play safety, could play corner, could play nickel. But Dorian Brew obviously is at the top of that board. He's visiting Ohio State this weekend, where his mom's in the Ohio State Hall of Fame. Texas is expected to get him on campus in April, maybe spring game weekend. We'll see on that. And a June official visit. That's likely to be the 14th through 16th. I think family's working on some things there to get visits locked in. He's already got Ohio State locked in June 21st through 23rd, and USC as well. LSU, where his father was a track star, an Olympian, will get an official visit as well. And Oregon's Oregon's in the mix as well. But it's really Ohio State, Texas, LSU, USC. I think those are the four schools. A true national recruitment for Dorian Brew. We went over Kobe Sellers. Cortland Guillory out of Klein Oak was on campus Saturday. He's a guy that's officially visiting Texas June 7th through 9th. I think he's at A&M either this weekend or next weekend. So that's another guy. Texas offered a kid out of Ruston, Louisiana that I actually really liked yesterday. And I kind of caught wind of him at Under Armour Dallas. He was at the Under Armour camp in Dallas and did exceptionally well. That's Aiden Anding from Ruston High. Texas offered yesterday as a corner. So we'll see how quickly Texas gets him on campus. There you go. Coach Joseph offered him. Obviously, Coach T-Joe is from South Louisiana. But this is a kid who can really run. Very strong kid, track kid, but strong build. Did very, very well at Under Armour Camp Dallas. Did a great job on double moves. He's got that reactive quickness. He sticks his foot in the ground and has that explosiveness. So that is that's one to watch. We'll see how quickly Texas gets him on campus. But at corner, it's interesting. I think they're going to be evaluating guys this spring as well. Of course, Adonis Curry out of Quartz Hill High in Lancaster, California, 4-star corner. Texas working on getting that official visit set up. I think it'll be June 21st through 23rd, but we'll wait until that actually becomes official. But he's got a lot of visits around the country. I mean, you're around the West Coast. He's also visiting A&M, but Miami will get an official visit. And then you got Washington. Then you got Utah. Oregon is a possibility. So you're Adonis Curry, one of the top corners in the country as well. He's long arm, 6'1.5", and can really run. Probably will run 10.6 this spring.
Hey, Jerry, how many corners do you think they're going to try to take? in this recruiting class?
2 or 3. So one could be a combo, nickel type of guy. I think 2 or 3 is the number. I think it's going to be 4 or 5 DBs. Cade Phillips, obviously from Hightower. I think Texas would take him today. He's more of a DB in general, safety, leaning to safety at the next level. He's visiting A&M this weekend. Will be on campus at Texas April 6th and be back June 21st through 23rd for an official visit. I think Cade Phillips is one of the best in the country that I've seen. 6'1.5", closing on 6'2", about 180 pounds, 80-inch wingspan, 10-inch hands, and his long jump 24/7.
20. I'm trying to picture long jumping 24/7 as a high schooler, and it's just
and his first meet as a junior, first meet of the year.
That's insane, man.
That would have placed him in the state meet last year, by the way.
That's crazy. All right, Bobby, why don't you tell folks out there how they can escape the crazy insurance trap with BKCW?
Yeah, absolutely. BKCW, one of our sponsors of the show. We appreciate them very much as a partner here with us. The insurance trap is when your insurance professional for your business doesn't really talk to you except for the very last minute, and then they deliver the news of a rate increase. When this happens, the agent's providing little to no value, and you're stuck in what we call the insurance trap. BKCW takes you out of the out of the insurance trap, operating out of their headquarters in Austin and owned by a UT grad. BKCW uses a 5-step process to identify your business's weak spots, design a plan, execute it, and monitor your situation throughout the year so that you can lower your insurance costs and effectively manage your company's risk. BKCW has already helped some of the most well-known construction companies, restaurant groups, breweries, even on Texas football, as well as nonprofits in Central Texas, escape the insurance trap. And it all starts with a free risk assessment. Go to bkcw.com or send an email to info@bkcw.com to get started with a free risk assessment. Once again, we appreciate their partnership here at Coffee and Football.
And then the other big news, of course, tonight, women's basketball. They play at 9 o'clock. Big game there, Jerry.
Got to guard the three-point line. Gonzaga shoots 40% from 3 as a team. They have 3 guards that have made 95, 92, and 76 threes. I believe 2 of those are twins from the Houston area. Jersey Village High School, I believe, is where they played. And then they have a big. So they play that 4 out, 1 in around her. Really can shoot the basketball. Texas has to guard the three-point line very effectively tonight because it's going to be a Gonzaga home game in Portland. So this will be a challenge for Texas because this is the best three-point shooting team Texas has played this year, probably in the country. Honestly, at this point, left in women's college basketball, taking Caitlin Clark and Iowa out of the equation, right? But Gonzaga can make threes from everywhere. So you have to be really sound in your rotations. And I think one of the big keys for Texas women's basketball here moving forward is Madison Booker. If a team can get her in early foul trouble, Texas will struggle offensively. So she's got to stay away from that one game where she gets an early foul trouble. And if she can do that, I think Texas will compete and be in the game with anybody coming up tonight and then hopefully on Sunday.
All right, guys, before we move on, yesterday when we ended the show, we had a super chat come in, and we need to get to that real quick and so much more. He says, do you foresee a salary cap for NIL or a forced transition of wealth from big schools to smaller to level the playing field, akin to what schools in Texas do? And will the spring game be on LA Gent?
I think that's akin, not akin. But here's what I would say to you, Blake. I don't see a salary cap on NIL. I could see a salary cap based on a portion of what they make from the TV contracts. So I don't think you can enforce any sort of limit on NIL. That's going to be that's got to remain free market. If Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning can make $10 million, or Caitlin Clark, for example, right, which is a terrific example, the young basketball player at Iowa. They need to be able to make whatever they want. Nobody tells LeBron James he can't go get a deal with Nike for $1 billion. Why would you tell a college kid that they can't? I mean, that's the whole purpose, and that's the whole antiquated version of what amateurism is for the NCAA. I don't think they're going to have that, but I do think there'll be some level of revenue sharing agreement between the big schools and the television partners. And then from there, they will figure it out. Now, the SEC and Big Ten may be able to share more and have higher figures than the Big 12, the ACC, et cetera. But I don't see that. And then as far as the LHN having the spring game, that's absolutely going to happen, is my understanding. Having talked to some folks there. So it will be on. I don't know. Their coverage oftentimes is not. I will caution you this. You may not see every play at the spring game if you watch on LHN because they like to cut away and talk to like the coach, Steve Sarkisian, or do a sideline interview with a Vince Young or Michael Huff or somebody that's come back for the game as well. So if you want to see the game, I suggest going to it. It's free and very open, get good seats, etc.
Hey, by the way, somebody asked about women's basketball recruiting. Mike G answered it, but watch Jordan Lee, guard from California, can absolutely shoot. It's going to be a great fit with women. I think Vic's best days are ahead of him at Texas based on what he's doing in recruiting and what he's got coming back next year.
I was going to say, and that is a Booker coming back, and possibly Rory Harmon as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a chance. There are some people that are picking Gonzaga tonight, by the way, Jerry. I read an article, I believe it was in The Athletic yesterday, picking Gonzaga as a upset pick because of what you said, the 3-point shooting of the Zags.
Yeah, if they get hot, that's a very tough game. You really have to guard the 3-point line tonight, which means you're going to give up some straight line drive opportunities.
And Texas is a 5.5-point favorite in that game. Okay, y'all. Well, let's bring in our special guest for today, Peyton Yeager from Fox 4 in Dallas-Fort Worth area. Peyton, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. It's early, so I just took a shower, put on. Thanks for having me.
Hey, look, I get the first comment. This is a Friendswood takeover today.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I went to Friendswood High, 93. Yeah, okay, a little before you, but we've never had two Friendswood people on the show at the same time. So
I don't think I've ever even met anyone up here in Dallas from Friendswood. I'm like, oh, I'm from like a suburb in Houston. They're like the Woodlands. I'm like, no, but it's okay.
Peyton, you're a reporter in for the Fox affiliate there in Dallas. I'm sure you've been watching the Rangers and Cowboys, and you're obviously a Longhorn grad as well. Welcome to the show. I got to ask you, the first thing I thought of in this whole thing is one of the reasons we like to introduce former Longhorns that are now in different spots around the country, whether it's in media or what have you. And that's one of the reasons we asked you to come on. I noticed on your bio that you went straight from Austin, Texas to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and then Oklahoma City. So you went straight into the belly of the beast.
Guys, I went through the trenches.
Yeah. What does that feel like when you go from Austin, where you're obviously a Texas fan, where you go from Austin and all of a sudden you got to cover the Razorbacks and the Sooners?
It's horrible, but it's not horrible. I'm sorry. I wouldn't trade the path for anything. Right out of college, you are just looking for a job. So I applied to the Waco, to the Lubbock, to the Fayetteville, to the Louisiana Monroe, etc. So I was like, I'm going to go probably somewhere where they don't like the Longhorns, but Northwest Arkansas was just beautiful. It actually was, Northwest Arkansas or like Lubbock. There really was no decision. So I loved my time there. And then I really wanted to come back to Austin as like a mid-market since I'm from Houston, but Dallas was also a dream. So I was like, okay, I'll go to Fayetteville for 2 years, come back to Austin, get my mid-market here. I know the Longhorns, etc. But I didn't get the job. So I was like heartbroken, so upset. I was like, I'm going to quit. This is what I wanted. But then a lot of people were like, Oklahoma City has fantastic, experience with severe weather. It's the capital of the state. So I was like, whatever. I looked in some girls' bios in Dallas and Houston. They had gone to Oklahoma City because I've never been there. In college, we had the Red River rivalry. So why would I ever go to a game there? So I had no idea what to expect. But I took the job there. and I wouldn't trade it for the world. Now, I was the only Longhorn in the newsroom. Like, my entire desk was Longhorn, screensaver, Longhorns, the field, DKR, and it would just get messed up like every day, especially Red River Rivalry Week. But I would say I'm like a stronger person because of it. But it was fun, and now I'm dating a Sooner, so for a while now, and it's like, it's just a lot. But I just feel like since I lived there, I know a lot of tricks up my sleeves of like what I can say that will really make them angry.
Oh, give us an example. Give us an example of that.
Well, I mean, he uses the Kansas thing to me all the time, and now this year, I'm like, but we were watching when OU was playing Kansas and like the rain delay, and I was just sipping my coffee like, it was so fun.
So talk about Arkansas, Texas moving to the SEC.
Oh my gosh.
So you got very familiar with SEC when you were in Fayetteville. Talk a little bit about that. More than you expected, what you expected, because it's different when you start.
Yeah, it was different. By the way, I have a lot of Arkansas followers, and they know that I toy with them. I went to Fayetteville when we played them, like 2 years ago. I was like, oh, Peyton homecoming, we're back. Oh my God, that was the worst trip ever. But I am very excited. So I was there when Brett Bielema was there and like got fired on the field after, and it was this whole thing. But the atmosphere is crazy. Like, I also went to the Arkansas LSU like Battle of the Boot, and it was a night game and it was freezing, but Arkansas was not very good at the time, but they were so dedicated. That fan base is absolutely nuts. I also went to the Alabama when Alabama was like right up there peaking, and that was just terrifying. But then 2 years later we would beat them, so I was like, oh my God, I feel really good. But it is a different beast, but I think that Austin can totally hang with it. Like, our city is so huge, there's just no excuse for us not to, compared to Fayetteville.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Peyton, now you're doing all kinds of big events. I looked at some stuff you've been doing. What are some of the fun things you've been doing of late? Did you cover opening day yesterday? What have you been up to?
Oh gosh. So also, I'm from Houston, like y'all know, Friendswood.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up an Astros fan, and my dad is like the biggest Astros fan of all time. Bagwell was like my first crush. Like, we would go to every games, like the Killer Bees. I grew up on it. But obviously I live here now, and I kind of dabbled in the Rangers, and I felt like kind of bad that they hadn't won anything. But I know how that feels. Like, I covered the World Series, all of the World Series parade, everything after that. And that was such a fun experience because I just loved looking at the fans. And even yesterday at opening day, it's still very raw. Like, I resonate with that as a Longhorn. Like, we want it so bad, and we pour so much into it. So I really resonated with that, and I'm so happy for this fan base. But yeah, opening day was so fun. They broke like a regular game attendance yesterday. The banner could be like a little bit better, but I'm not a graphic designer for anything. I'm not in charge. But it was really, I am so happy for them.
Good stuff.
Okay, so I got to ask you, Friends was a little bit more leans more A&M than Texas. Fair to say. All right. So how early did you know you wanted to go to University of Texas? Do you come from a family of Texas fans, or did it just happen that Texas ended up being the place you attended?
It kind of just happened. Like, I am envious of people who are on Twitter or on social media, and they're like, I'm a 6th generation Longhorn. Like, I'm so envious of that because I'm not. So Friendswood is, for people who don't know, South Houston, kind of by Clear Lake, by NASA. My mom worked at NASA growing up. That's why we lived there. So my parents are from Michigan. Parents are Wolverines, and they moved down to Houston in '84 when my mom was pregnant with my brother for my mom's job at NASA. So we grew up in Houston. I mean, I was born in '94, so that's all I knew. And I don't know. Like, I visited Michigan. They were really pushing me to go to Michigan. It was just way too cold and way too far away, maybe. I got into USC. I thought actually I was going to go to USC, but then I got into the honors program at UT. and I got like a full ride, and I went and visited. And you know, when you're 18, you just like want to get out. You're like, I want to go as far as possible, like USC or maybe somewhere on the East Coast. I don't know. That's just how I was. But I visited Austin. I got into the honors program. I looked around and I was like, this is for me. But I actually went for pre-med because I wanted to do what my mom does at NASA. So I got like a full ride pre-med. They were building the Dell Medical School, etc. So I was like, okay, this is my path. And then halfway through, I wanted to be a journalist. And then I had to tell them that, and they were very confused. But we made it now.
So for those that don't know, pretty good volleyball player, went to state. What have you, I'm sure you've enjoyed watching Madison Skinner, Asia O'Neal, Texas volleyball program. Kind of what are your thoughts there? And did you go watching when you were in school there?
Yeah. So I grew up playing volleyball, and I played the whole club volleyball. Like I would play school volleyball in the fall, club volleyball in the spring, going into the summer. So really all year volleyball. I'm 5'10", and I was like the shortest girl on my team. So we were extremely competitive. Like when we would stand to do the national anthem, we would stand, height, and I would be over here. So all my friends were growing up were like 6'4", 6'5". I mean, they went to play at TCU, BYU, USC, etc. So when they would come play the Longhorns, I would come. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to play at Texas. Texas is the best school for volleyball. So I knew I was way too short, not good enough. But my friends went on to play at Big 12 schools. So they would come play and I would come support them. But I think it's just an iconic program. And like even growing up in high school, everyone was like, I want to play volleyball at Texas. So I'm glad I got to go to a school that was very volleyball based because I love it. I still watch it, obviously.
Hey, Peyton, you get to check in on the Cowboys every so often and visit with those guys. What's it like covering the Cowboys from time to time?
So I want people to know that when they go to my Twitter, like I am, and follow me, or what, if you don't have to, if you don't want to, but I do mostly news. So I'm like a news reporter. However, the Rangers winning the World Series, that's news. Or Cowboys Thursday Night Football, or on Thanksgiving, whatever, that's news. So I get to be a little fun and do it. But I went to my first Cowboys game this year. I've been here for 3 years, and that was my first Cowboys game, and it was an experience. The people there are crazy, but I am a Cowboys fan. It's getting a little bit difficult right now. But I mean, I went to UT when we had Charlie Strong, so like I know difficult. So.
And so do you need any help on bets with your dad for Texas-Michigan game?
Oh, we're going to the game.
It's going to be a big first weekend in September for you guys now.
I know. It's going to be – because me and my brother are Longhorns, and then my parents are Wolverines. So it's just going to be weird. I'm like, who would have ever thought that this happened? And they're like such on a high right now. And – the game was in Houston. So they're still from the national championship. So I'm just like, can you just stop talking about it?
I'm looking forward to hearing what that was and how much you won by, because
I don't know. My dad's going to be like
win in Ann Arbor next year.
Yeah. I think we're going to win, and I'm not just saying that. But he's going to be like, don't you wish you went here? I feel like I can just hear him saying it now. It's like, no, I don't.
I love it.
Well, Peyton, people can obviously see you on Fox 4 and DFW, but they want to check you out online. What's your social media handles? How can they get to where you are?
Okay, so I'm on Fox 4 every night if you want to stay up late. The morning is not usually my vibe, so I'm at night at 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. if y'all are in the DFW area you want to watch. And then on everything else, I'm just Peyton Yeager, PeytonYager. Super easy. I try to keep it lighthearted. I post a lot of sports for fun, and then I also have some news. I do DFW, but I try to do Houston as well because I have a lot of followers from there. So thank you guys for having me. I'm like shocked you guys reached out. I'm like,
it's all fun. We really try to introduce people to different folks from around the country that are Longhorns at heart. And it sounds to me, Peyton, that you have a great career ahead of yourself. Congrats on a great start to it as well. And we really wish you nothing but the best from Longhorn Nation. Okay, man? Okay?
Thank you so much for having me. I'll come on anytime. Football season, you call me. I'll be here.
We may get you on. We may get you for Texas OU. We may.
Oh my gosh!
Thank you, Peyton.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. Take care of yourself. We appreciate you. Welcome.
Naaman Roberts there. Moses Malone Jr. went to Friendswood. We brought out a little Friendswood in the chat. I actually caught Coach Mo Jr. in Youth League in Friendswood. Andre White was the point guard on that team, was a walk-on at Baylor. So, yes, I went undefeated as a coach in youth basketball in Friendswood, by the way. As you should, you have Moses Jr. and Andre White, the two best players.
I'll be very surprised if she doesn't go far based on that interview right there.
No
like national news type personality, really well spoken, articulate. I'll be really surprised if she doesn't go far. In 10, 15 years, we may be looking up and she's on the nightly news somewhere national.
No doubt.
All right, y'all. Well, before we move on, we got a lot of questions to get to. But Jerry, can you get your shades out and tell everybody out there about Gooder?
Look, here's the thing. Gooder this brand has taken off, right? I mean, this is the stylish sunnies starting at only $25 a pair. And as I said when we started Coffee and Football today, if you want to go to a Texas baseball game right now and you don't want people to know who you are, you just get your Gooders and you put them on there and you sit there and watch the loss. As a Texas fan, but we'll see. Maybe things will turn around. But look, this is pop art for your face. But make it a fashion. No slip, no bounce, all polarized, all angles. Great thing about these is, you ever been in the ocean, lose your $250 pair of glasses, and you're just like, golly, man. I mean, or drop your glasses, step on them. These are sturdy, $25 a pair. They're taking over in the volleyball world. I was at a beach volleyball tournament over the weekend, and it seemed like everybody was wearing Gooder glasses. But look, this is Vanguard Visionary, New Wave Renegade, Born to be Envied, Pop Art Prodigy, the Mod 1 out, and approaching cult status. These are your Pop G styles of Gooder. They're 100% polarized and only $25 because they're so affordable, as I said. I never worry about losing or breaking them. They're always releasing new colors and collaborations. You go to Gooder.com and you'll see that. So if you want to support the show and try a pair, Gooder is giving On Texas Football listeners free shipping. Go to Gooder.com/On Texas all caps. Use that code On Texas all caps for free shipping. Gooder offers a 30-day money-back guarantee and 100% satisfaction, and I am 100% satisfied with mine. Again, that's Gooder.com/On Texas, and use code On Texas for free shipping.
You look like the Blues Brothers. Well, like I said, we do have a lot of questions to get to, and we just had a super chat come in, so we will get to it. It's 420 somewhere. Thank you for the super chat. It says, who do you see as players at risk of entering the transfer portal post spring ball? Hook them. Maybe not specific players, but even positions. What can we see attrition from?
Look, I'm not predicting a player or anything, but I'm just going to say this. At some point, one of Kyle Flood's kids is going to leave him. I mean, you can't, it's inevitable, right? You're 3 deep at offensive line at Texas, probably a little bit more than that as far as scholarship linemen right now. Eventually somebody's going to leave. I mean, it's inevitable, right, Bobby? Running back room's really stacked at Texas right now. So we'll see. We'll see about positionally. That's kind of two I've looked at a little bit.
A lot of rumors about a nickel or two.
Yeah.
Essentially, because somebody wrote on our friend Close to Jumping on Texas Football. He wrote a post that was pretty astute, I thought. And he said, here are the guys that are at risk of transferring. 3rd-year players who aren't starting.
Correct.
Okay. 2nd-year players who are behind somebody younger than them, so they don't have a path to the field, or guys that just aren't capable. Texas doesn't have a lot of guys right now that just aren't capable. So really you're looking at either part one, a guy that's behind, that's not starting as a 3rd-year guy, or a guy that is behind a younger player. So if you look at the Texas roster and think about it that way, there are a number of those. Linebacker is going to be one, Jerry. And I think what happens when you have a superstar like Anthony Hill, he kind of vaults past some people, right?
Yeah.
And you got to understand that. When you have maybe a Colin Simmons causes that at defensive end, right? I wouldn't be surprised if, like, I think the number for us to all look at is 5 to 8. Okay. I don't think there's going to be more than 8. If there's more than 8, then that's going to hurt a little bit more than anticipated. But I do think there's going to be some. And Jerry, you mentioned a running back. I mean, obviously, I think a nickel is in play here. I mean, there could be a linebacker or two. You could also be talking about an edge. You could be talking about an offensive lineman or two. There's a number of different places where Texas is so talented now that even the problem I have is that even they're so talented that some of the losses may actually hurt the depth of the Longhorns. And, that's just the way it is in college football these days because of the transfer rules. And you're going to have to learn how to live with it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and so much more at 8:46. I think we read the super chat. He may have not been here for that.
Yes.
So yeah, we did read the super chat.
It was the very start of it, by the way, if you want to rewind and get that.
Yeah. By the way, so some people are asking, is Texas over the scholarship right now? They're not this spring, but they are when you count the guys coming in. So that there's definitely going to have to be some movement after spring practice when the spring portal window opens, which is April 15th to April 30th.
Sorry, Jerry. He said, living rent-free in UT. He says, what's up with Akana? I haven't heard his name at all.
I think he's behind some other guys. He hasn't gained as much weight as maybe you thought he would either. Doesn't mean he's not a good player right now. But, when Darian Gallette's playing the same position right now, and Gallette, I think, is a little bit ahead of him. Then you have other guys in that are just Maurice Blackwell is still older. You have David Benda came back for an extra year. You have Anthony Hill. You have Leonga Lafau in the middle. And so I just think that it's a numbers game right now. You can't get everybody on the field combined with the fact that he probably hasn't gained as much good weight as maybe was anticipated on his way into the program.
And then, by the way, I got a text from Kobe Sellers. He is on campus. So getting ready for that Texas practice. He's actually been on campus since about 6:30 this morning. So got in to take in some team meetings before the practice at 9. So there's a little play-by-play on how some of these recruiting visits go.
And that's the defensive back out of Pearland Shadow Creek.
Exactly right. 4-star, which is a June 14th through 16th official visit to Texas. Oklahoma 21st through 23rd. I think it's going to be one of those two, but he does visit A&M the 7th through 9th.
And I'm glad you brought him up because that's actually a great lead into this next question from Antoine. He says, Jerry, do you think it'll be an all Greater Houston defensive back class?
I do not. I don't think that's going to be the case. I do think Texas leads for Cade Phillips, probably a pretty big lead. He's at A&M this weekend. I think he'll be on campus at LSU as well. Obviously, he's going to officially visit those schools, and then Texas gets the last visit June 21st through 23rd. I think Texas is in a pretty good spot there. Look, Texas just offered the corner from Ruston, Louisiana. Texas is messing with some guys in the state of Florida. A Major Preston from IMG is visiting next April 13th weekend. He's a guy that's from Hopewell, Virginia, that transferred down to IMG last year, played right next to Jordan Johnson-Rebel. I think Bobby watched him play. That's a guy Texas liked in the spring. Fahim Delane out of Good Counsel, the safety hybrid type of player, is coming in April 13th as well. So Donis Curry, the corner out of California. I don't think it's just going to be an all Greater Houston or even in-state class of defensive backs. I think Texas will have at least one guy from outside the state of Texas in this class.
And we'll stay on recruiting for a minute here. E. Kim says, good morning from Rockford, Illinois. Will there be 4 defensive line takes in 2025?
3 or 4 if you get the 4 you want. I think the number moves to 4. So we'll see on that where Texas goes with that. I will say I think Malik Autry out of Opelika, who's committed to Auburn, I think there's a chance he's on campus April 6th weekend. We'll see if that comes to pass, but I think there's a chance he is. Obviously, you have Brandon Brown, who was on campus Friday. That's a national battle in recruiting. USC, Tennessee, A&M, Florida, Miami, Ohio State even in the mix there. Texas needs to hold on to Brandon Brown. Zion Williams is a guy that Texas very much wants. He's visiting June 21st through 23rd. He's going to be one of the more fun recruiting battles because right now it's Texas LSU, which means it's Texas versus Bo Davis and Frank Wilson and Corey Raymond and all those guys. So that's a fun recruitment as well. Josiah Sharmer from Folsom, California, supposed to be on campus this weekend. We'll see if that gets bumped the next weekend. But Josiah Sharma, 6'5", 300-pound defensive lineman out of Folsom, California, I think one of the very best in the country. So you start looking at those guys. DJ Sanders out of Belleville, I think if you take 4D linemen, and he's the developmental fourth, I think he's got upside there. So we'll see what happens. But Texas they're zeroing in on some guys. But I'll say this about D-line too. Another thing that can affect that number is when the spring evaluation period starts, Kenny Baker is going to go out and see guys for the first time. I mean, he saw some kids in Houston. He saw some kids in Dallas. That 1 week, a week and a half, he was on the road after he was hired by Texas. But he got hired late because of the NFL season. So he hasn't gone out like it. They offered Derry Norris and Jarquez Carter. Jarquez Carter out of Newberry, Florida. Derry Norris out of Spruce Creek in Port Orange, Florida. He hasn't gone to evaluate those kids in person. They just really like what they saw on tape. So in May, he'll get to go see those guys in person. So based on some of those in-person evaluations and fits, that could affect kind of how things go, how many numbers Texas takes on the D-line. That could push the number to 4, period. But they need to hit on 2 or 3 of those very cream of the crop targets. And then Kenny Baker's got to find a couple of those other guys who have that upside that are going to develop really well that kind of fit his coaching style.
And then our next question, while you mentioned Coach Kenny Baker here, is from Vivek B. And he says, how have the reviews been on the new coaches, Nansen, Baker, etc., after the initial spring practices? Have you guys heard anything?
So I think Bobby and I are the same. We think Johnny Nansen was not a good, but maybe a great hire along the lines of Tashard Choice. From a coaching and recruiting standpoint, I can't tell you how impactful I think it is in California. Arizona, California. He's recruited those states for so long. I mean, think about it. He recruited Savea to UCLA. Then Savea transferred to Arizona. Savea is now at Texas. Johnny Nansen is really good if a guy follows you to 3 schools, Bobby. I mean, that says a lot in itself, especially he's not his position coach any longer. But I think he's a tremendous coaching hire. But for what Sark wants to do, having that footprint in recruiting in Southern California, Las Vegas, Arizona, and then in the Southeast region, I think Johnny Nansen was a home run hire, similar to Tashard Choice.
I like Kenny Baker too now.
Yes.
Having watched him, I watched him on Wednesday work out the defensive line quite a bit. He's got a different energy than Bo Davis, which I actually think if you're going to bring in a new coach, you want it to be somewhat different. So it's not just a rehash of what you had. And, we'll see. The one thing that people have said about Kenny Baker, and one of the reasons why they hired him, is his work as a pass rush guy.
Yeah.
Dude, which is different than Bo Davis. But I mean, I'm not trying to – Bo Davis is a really good coach, so no knock there. But Kenny Baker has a little pass rush specialist to himself as a interior defensive line coach. So I like that Sark went young at that position to kind of even up his staff from an age perspective, and then also went with a little bit different feel from a relatively young coach, new coach. It's good to have a mix on your coaching staff. You don't want to be all old, all young. You want to be a mix. And I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I think right now Baker is resonating in recruiting, by the way, Jerry, which is really good. I mean, you're only as good as your players. And he is finding some guys that he resonates with and gets along with, et cetera. And I think Texas will end up signing a good defensive line class in part because of that.
I want to say one thing, because I think one thing that happens when coaches leave, I want to say this, though, because I see the comments in chats that Bo Davis wasn't engaged in coaching or recruiting. That's not right. I talked to the kids, man. I just want to point this stuff out. This is what happens when coaches leave. Sometimes they get bad mouthed or whatnot, or the fan base forgets how good a coach those guys are just because they make a decision that's the same as yours as a fan. But if you think Bo isn't good, or isn't engaged in recruiting, you're going to end up looking bad on that one.
Well, Jerry, tell us how you can look good with our friends from Manscaped.
Look, man, I mean, the handyman is going to go on the road with me next week to Austin. That I can tell you. But look, it's that time. Just this is all you need to know about our friends at Manscaped. It's the gold standard in growing grooming, guys. That's all you need to know. When you open the box, you see it all. But right, this episode is brought to you by the spring cleaning champions. That's Manscaped. This season, make sure to groom your carpet and those drapes with the leaders in below the waist grooming. Clear out that nasty winter bush with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 and watch your confidence bloom like springtime flowers. Don't you know Clemson basketball's feeling like springtime flowers this morning? I mean, they had big win in the Sweet 16 last night. Embrace the season and join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our special offer. Go to manscaped.com and use code ONTEXAS, all caps, for 20% off plus free shipping. Look, I love this thing because it comes with a compact case. I take it with me everywhere I go, and I'm on the road quite a bit. And look, and this is another thing. Like I said about the handyman here, spring cleaning just doesn't apply to the nether regions. Get the full grooming experience with Manscaped's signature Beard Hedger Pro Kit plus Handyman Electric Face Shaver. Whether you're looking to craft your signature look or clean up that neckline, they're always the right tools for the job. Go get 20% off and free shipping with the code ONTEXAS, all caps, at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with code ONTEXAS at manscaped.com. And I always leave you with this, guys. You can be a Texas Tech fan and come to Austin and get Manscaped 57.7, or you can order your Manscaped and beat people to the punch.
Well done, as always. And we're going to continue on. We got some more coaching-related questions. Horn for life. We talk a lot about Sark, as we should, but what about PK? What grade would you give him for last year, and how can he improve this year?
Dude, A minus for last year. I mean, how much did they improve year over year on third down? Were they perfect? No. Were the DBs perfect? No. But you know what? End of the year, they got better until Washington kind of just, I mean, it wasn't that Texas had bad coverage against Washington, by the way. Look, they gave up too many points against Oklahoma. They gave up too much against Kansas State late. Same thing happened against TCU late, in my opinion, and then Washington. So if you say they had four bad games out of 14 that they played, I give them an A minus, and plus the improvement on third down defense put the offense in better situations all year long. I love PK from that standpoint of his consistency and what he brings. I think that they're going to continue to tweak the defense this year with what Johnny Nansen brings as well. Jerry and I talked about that yesterday, a little bit more one high look, we think, coming this year. So we'll see how it goes. But I like Pete Kwiatkowski's always been a solid defensive coordinator. He just didn't always have the players. The minute you started getting players, the minute the defense started getting better. And that's what's happened over the last 2 years. And
they got to, for me, they got to be a little more aggressive this year. They
probably will have to be.
They have to be. They're not going to have a choice. So that'll be big. I think the Nansen hire was big because look, here's the reality for Texas defensively last year. And I said this, and this was my opinion at the time. The Big 12 is not a good offensive line league. I mean, Oklahoma has a couple of tackles. Kansas State had a couple of interior guys. But if you look around, just wait until the NFL draft this year. Where are they? It's not a strong offensive line league. So Texas defensive numbers were a little inflated last year because it wasn't a strong offensive line league. But I think now, not that every team in the SEC is great, but the talent's a lot greater. There's better athletes. There's longer arm guys on the offensive line. You're going to be playing week in, week out against better offensive line talent. Doesn't mean they execute as well, but they're more talented players. Don't make no mistake. So you have to get more pressure now. You have to be more aggressive. There's better athletes on at the skill position in the SEC. So you have to not just get the PFF pressures, which I think are overrated. I think you got to get quarterbacks to the ground and hits and really disrupt timing.
Right, Blake, can you put those stats back up? I want to show something to people, and this is where a lot of people do have some issues with PK. Okay, and they're legitimate. So you see they're number one on third down conversions in the country, just tremendous, right? Points per play, points per game, very good. The one that kind of sticks out as a negative is opponents' yards per game. You're not the number one third down defense and the number 12 points per game and only the number 28 yards per game. They gave up too much yards between the 20s. That is what Jerry's getting at, I think. When you do that, sometimes you allow the offense to dictate the game to you. And PK does do that at times, even though when it gets into the red zone, it plays into his in the field condenses, it plays into his wheelhouse, number 8 in red zone scoring. So my point is, if there is a critique on PK, it was the moving the ball between the 20s of the opponents too easily, not necessarily the defense as a whole.
Okay, guys, our next question here comes from Steve. And Steve says, I feel like Sark does a great job scheming Quinn with one-read passes, but windows compress in red zone and we struggle. Do you agree? And how do you address these weaknesses and make Quinn the greatest of all time quarterback?
Well, I think they're on the way to trying to address that right now in practice. If you missed the outset, their practice number 6 starts in about, it may have just started actually, 9 o'clock. So that happens. Having listened to Quinn and watched a couple of workouts now, there's no question he feels more confident going into his third year as a starter at Texas than he did either of the first 2. I think that alone will make Steve Sarkisian more confident to call plays for Quinn Ewers. I mean, he'll be more used to seeing things, etc. So my thought process here is I do think that Quinn has to get more aggressive and make tighter window throws in the red zone. They can't be rub routes that are wide open, right? We found that out against Washington, 12 yards away from tying a game. You have to find ways to thread the needle at times. That's the next step in Quinn Ewers' progression, in my opinion, becoming a better red zone quarterback. I already know he's going to throw the deep ball better. I've seen it in practices right now. The question I have is he going to be that guy that can thread the needle a little bit in tight windows?
And our next one here is from Michael Rodriguez. He says, who in the program has been lighting it up and or expecting to do so that's going to make you sport them gooders because of how they are shining out?
I mean, running back room for me. I mean, look, running back room is versatile guys, a lot of talent and depth in that running back room. I think the 2 guys they brought in this year, Jarrett Gibson, Christian Clark, really fit the inside zone scheme, the SEC power run game, which Sark's going to want to have from time to time. You look at CJ Baxter, you look at Jaden Blue, the difference is how that CJ Baxter really fits the run scheme. Jaden Blue has all that explosive ability when you get the ball in his hands in the right places and you don't try to run him inside 12, 15 times. Don't square peg round hole him. But I think the versatility and the depth at running back is why you're going to see more of Rod's favorite pony package this year.
One player that perhaps is I'd say Trey Moore. Guys that look, I'll be honest. I think I underrated him coming in even though he had 14.5 sacks at UTSA. I looked at the numbers and a lot of those sacks were against some of the weaker teams. Okay. But from what I'm hearing behind the scenes and what I've seen is you understand why he had those sacks now. Yes, he's undersized a little bit compared to other guys, but he's quick and he's smart. I think he's been making some things happen that that would make me want to wear my gooders. I'll put it that way. and other people, which is particularly important because Jerry mentioned the pass rush in being more aggressive. If Texas, for whatever reason, doesn't get a guy out of the portal on the interior, that pass rush is going to have to be lights out when it gets an opportunity. because otherwise people are going to try to run the ball down your throat and maybe be successful.
Yeah, and I would also say this. So it's obvious Neto has been one of those guys this spring, or you don't even tinker with moving a 3-year starter from left guard, even in practices at this point. So it's obvious Neto's continued those 3-4 weeks of strong practice to end the 23 season has carried over to January and then into spring practice.
Hey, Blake, it's time. Every Friday, this time of year, we try to talk a little baseball.
Yes.
Have a baseball segment. The Longhorns playing Kansas State for the lead in the Big 12, I believe. You are our resident baseball expert, so I'm going to let you lead the way and talk a little ball on the diamond today.
All right, I'll try to keep it clean here, Bobby. Yeah, they took the field yesterday for the 3-game series with Kansas State. As Bobby said, if they win 2, which they have to now, then they are in first place in the Big 12. Unfortunately, last night did not go as planned. 14-6 was the final. That score also a little misleading because 3 of those 6 came at the very end of the game, and then the first 3 came within the first 2 innings. Texas was actually up 3-0, and then I believe it was the second inning. Kansas State just exploded, a wild pitch, some walks, a couple of singles, things like that. All of a sudden, they were down 8-3, and then Kansas State just kept piling it on until the top of the 9th, like I said, to make that 14-6. But man, I think the question that I have, that a lot of people have, I've even seen it asked in the chat, is what's going on with LBJ? He was supposed to be the strongest pitcher coming in this year, and last night was not good. If you're giving up 8 runs in 1 inning, something obviously is going on. But the question is, what? I don't know. Texas has a lot of issues.
It sounds like Texas is in a little bit of a spiral.
Yeah,
right now they lost Texas A&M Corpus Christi on Tuesday.
Yes.
Now they lose the opener to K-State, and what did they? I guess K-State scored 14 unanswered runs.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. I don't know. I mean, there's so many issues, and they're so up and down. Like one day they look like the best team that there could be in the Big 12, and then they lose to Texas A&M Corpus Christi and then go out and get beat 14-6 by Kansas State. So I don't know. There's just so many question marks right now, and I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if you can find an answer at this point mid-season. I mean, honestly, I think right now, for me anyway, and probably for most Texas fans, the best that you can hope for is that they win enough to get in, and then they get hot at the right time. But I don't know. Like I said,
you don't foresee given what you're seeing right now, you don't foresee a Big 12 championship in their final year in the Big 12.
If this past week has been any indication, I don't know. I mean, like I said, they're only a couple games behind first place. Don't get me wrong, but that's kind of misleading in my opinion. Number one, because the Big 12 is down this year. Like TCU was supposed to be the favorite. They're dead last in the Big 12. A lot of the other programs in the Big 12, Texas Tech was supposed to be good. They're not doing well. So the Big 12 is really down. This would have been the year to seize the day or seize the opportunity, I guess, if you will. But there's just no consistency whatsoever with this team, and it's absolutely killing them. There's no doubt.
Today, does Ace Whitehead the second day starter or day 2 starter?
Yes, unless anything's changed recently from what I've heard, it's going to be Ace today. So it's going to be he's been fun to watch this year. So if you want to pick a good day to watch Texas baseball this week, it should be today. I believe they start at 6:00 that game on ESPN Plus. And by the way, I need to say thanks to Chinook Seedery for sponsoring our baseball segments on Fridays. Baseball season is obviously here, which means you have to have the essentials ready for those 9 innings of fun. And by that, I mean sunflower seeds. They're a must when it comes to baseball, and Chinook Seedery has you covered. They had me covered yesterday at my son's game, all the way up to watching the Rangers win last night, and even through a little bit of that Texas game as well. But with 8 unique flavors to choose from, you'll definitely find a flavor that you love, whether you're taking them on a camping trip, to the ball game, or even on the wide open road. And Chinook has crafted the best tasting sunflower seeds on the planet, and their unique flavors are made from real foods and real spices. That means real Parmesan cheese, authentic Hatch chilies, and freshly harvested dill. Whether you're actually in the game or just watching it, grab a bag of Chinook. You can find them in your favorite store, or you can go online. They have a great sample pack right now. You get all those flavors, including their new one with Bobby Witt Jr., the lemon pepper. It's awesome. Check them out, ChinookSeedery.com, and seeds the day with Chinook.
Seeds the day, huh? What copywriter came up with that? Did you write that copy for them?
I wrote a lot of that copy from them, but I did not write that tagline for them. I do like it though. So
all good.
All
Let's
right,
get some
guys.
questions going. Let's get some questions going.
Yeah, we got to get back to some football talk here, and let's do this one from Corey J. Who's going to be the most improved position group in the 2024 season?
See if Bobby and I agree on this. I'm going safety. I think safety added some tremendous experience plus talent in Andrew Makuba, a guy that will be on an NFL roster one day. I think that's instantly an upgrade from the two guys that departed, obviously. And then you bring in the freshmen, Xavier Filsaime and Jordan Johnson-Rebel. They're both running third team. I've heard very good things. Obviously, Xavier Filsaime, he was expected to be physical, downhill safety. If you watched his tape, that showed up. If you saw him in high school, which I stopped by McKinney during the season, that was pretty evident. That showed up. Jordan Johnson-Rebel, physicality, I think is also been impressive to Texas early on. I'm not surprised by that because when I went to IMG and talked to the coaching staff down there and the people that run IMG football, they said Jordan Johnson-Rebel is a very physical player. It's kind of underrated part of his game. And now that he's about 10, 12 pounds bigger, 193, 191, 193 in that area, I think Texas has two solid freshmen. But then Derek Williams being in year 2, right? And then you have the versatility, Bobby, as you said, at that position. I think safety is going to be by far the most improved position on the team next year.
I am different than you. I think it's edge. I just think that they got too many new guys. Trey Moore's addition is a new starter.
Yeah,
they're not necessarily going to have a new starter. I mean, Makuba may be second string behind Taft and Derek Williams. I mean, he's gonna be in the rotation. There's no doubt about that. But Trey Moore, Ethan Burt, and Barron Sorrell, a year older, guys like Colin Simmons on the way in, Colton Vosick may be healthy finally. I think that is the most improved position on the team for 2024. And Jerry, I'm going to say this: I don't know that it's necessarily close. That's how strongly I feel about the edge group in comparison to the safeties.
And our next question, y'all, is from Ivory Martin. And Ivory says, one tight end I want to see succeed is Spencer Shannon. Do you have any news on him? We can use that 6'7" size in the red zone.
Yeah, so I watched the tight ends quite a bit on Wednesday. I would say this. He definitely can catch the ball. He's good hands. He's a former baseball player. He's kind of an all-sport guy. I see him more inline blocker right now.
Yeah, agree.
He is, because he has those long arms, and he's sneaky physical, if that makes sense. He's kind of long and lean, but he's kind of sneaky physical. I think that he is more of an inline blocker. Like I could see him passing up Juan Davis as the inline blocker for second team reps behind Gunnar Helm. Now, Amari Niblack may have something to say about that, but just something to keep your eye on. He is ahead of Will Randall, in my opinion, at tight end. But Niblack, I haven't seen him work enough in line. You know, I've only seen him catch passes, and I haven't really talked to anybody that's talked about him as a blocker yet behind the scenes. They haven't done a lot. It's only been 2 practices or 3 practices in with the pads. So let me find out a little bit more about that. I did hear, as I mentioned and opened this show with, that the offensive line, we've done a lot of talking about it, but from what I'm hearing behind the scenes and in closed portions of practice, the offensive line right now for the Longhorns looks like very, very much like a team strength heading into 2024.
We have a super chat here from Ryan Nelson. Thank you, Ryan. He says, Bobby, Quinn is ready to merge onto the highway.
Yeah, I think he's, you know, some people think that and Colt McCoy did this, right? Colt McCoy went from a really bad sophomore year or below average sophomore year to just a tremendous junior year. Okay. Well, Quinn didn't do that. He kind of has been more of a gradual improver. Does that make sense? Like he even described it as the first year at Texas, I was just trying to hold on to the wheel. Last year, I was kind of driving and steering. This year, I want to take control of the wheel, right? Quinn is more of that incremental guy. Now, he always, in the context of, he has the golden arm. He has the ability to make every throw, etc. So merging onto the highway, whatever more metaphor you want to use, he will be better this year. And you know what? I'm pretty sure based on what I've seen from him, he's going to be better the year after that. He'll be better the year after that. He's got about 5-6 years more of growth in him, right, as a quarterback. Now, it won't be as a Longhorn, obviously, but he's not just, okay, throw it all in, and all of a sudden, kaboom, he's got it all. He's going to improve incrementally each and every year for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years, in my opinion. That's just who he is as a learner and as a player. Good player. Going to be really good for the Longhorns.
C. Gaddis at 916. I can tell you that Phil Simi and Jordan Johnson-Rebel have both showed pretty well early on in special teams.
I was actually going to ask that question here in a second. Going back to Quinn for just one moment, guys. Horns fan 224. Is there a path for Quinn to be picked #1 overall in 2025?
I don't know of anybody else that would be picked ahead of him at quarterback right now. Does anybody know? And quarterback usually goes 1-1.
So I think the key here in 2024 season, 2025 NFL draft, headed into last year, you knew 2 or 3 names, right? You knew Caleb Williams, you knew Drake May, right? I think Jaden Daniels may end up being the first or second quarterback taken. I mean, second, but some people think he should be first. Dan Orlovsky, people like that, which is interesting. But this year, you look at the 2025 draft, there isn't that guy that people are pinpointing right now as the #1 like they were Caleb Williams a year ago. I think that's what's going to be interesting. I think there's going to be a lot of movement in this draft. So who plays really well, who has that kind of come out of nowhere season? Could have Riley Leonard, who was thought of to be a guy, then he gets hurt at Duke. Now he's at Notre Dame. He's got better players around him at Notre Dame. Does he take a big jump? Who's going to take that big jump this year in college football at the quarterback position? I think Quinn has as good a shot as any, but there's not that guy that people are pointing to right now. That guy is the leader of the pack to be the #1 pick in the draft. Oh, and by the way, he just won a Heisman. Oh, and by the way, he plays for Lincoln Riley. There's not that guy right now.
I agree. It's there for the taking. It's there with a great year.
I say don't let Shadir hear you guys. Yeah, that's true, because the guys that play 6A football quarterback in Texas kind of gone by the wayside, apparently.
What an idiot. I mean, I'm not trying – I shouldn't say idiot, but what a –
idiotic comment.
Yeah, dumb statement. I mean, just it served no purpose. I mean, none.
No.
Like, where did anybody even go there with you? I mean, anyways.
Somebody's asking, didn't Jaden Daniels pro days? Like, I don't know. I don't watch all the pro days. I do know that the guys who have really studied these quarterbacks, they like him a lot.
It was rough. We'll just put it that way.
It was rough, or is it good?
No, it was rough. It was a rough pro day.
Yeah, he didn't throw well?
No, it was kind of all over the place, really. Before we move on to our final question, guys, lost my train of thought there for a second. Can you tell us about BKCW and escaping the insurance trap one more time?
Absolutely, Blake. Our partners, BKCW Insurance, talk about the insurance trap. They are insurance for your business. As you know, people that have owned businesses, a lot of times you just get a call at the end of the year saying, hey, your rates are going up. Well, BKCW doesn't operate that way with their clients. Operating out of their headquarters in Austin and owned by a UT grad, BKCW uses a 5-step process to identify your business's weak spots, design a plan, execute it, and monitor your situation throughout the year so that you can lower your insurance costs and effectively manage your company's risks, BKCW has already helped some of the most well-known construction companies, restaurant groups, breweries, and other nonprofits in Central Texas escape the insurance trap. And it all starts with a free risk assessment. All you have to do is reach out to them today. Go to bkcw.com or send an email to info@bkcw.com to get started with a free risk assessment or claims audit and escape the insurance trap. Thank you very much to BKCW for their sponsorship and partnership on Texas football.
So Burt Reynolds Jr. asked a good question. What about Cam Ward at Miami? The key with Cam Ward is if he could have gone pro, he would have gone pro. So that means he's got a long way to go up the draft boards.
His great player, in my opinion, his throwing motion may cause bigger issues in the NFL than it does in college. Little side.
And by the way, he's a Houston area guy. Well, I guess not technically Houston area. West Columbia, whatever you want to call it, is where he came out of high school. Obviously went small school, then transferred up to Washington State. So he's done a good job maximizing his talent over these last few years.
Okay. Britt Rasco with a question. He asked, can a part-time /backup/rotation lineman get drafted similar to a running back such as Roschon Johnson?
I actually think you're going to see that with Texas in the next 3 years, that they're going to have a lineman that was a part-time starter or backup, really good backup, make an NFL roster. I think that's where things are headed. I mean, just think about it this way. Michigan had 6 offensive linemen invited to the combine this year. So they're had Zinter not got hurt, they were going to have somebody get drafted or was invited to the combine that wasn't even a full-time starter for them at Michigan. So if you're deep enough, if you've evaluated well enough and developing these guys well enough at a blue blood program, that can absolutely happen for you.
And then,
there you go.
And then our next question here, fellas, comes from Zane Petty. And he says, would Neto and Campbell be the best combo of run blocking guards for Texas in the last 30 years?
I don't know. Justin Blaylock and Casey Studdard may have something to say about that. Those are two pretty good run blockers. Nato and DJ have so much talent, and I think that they are just now starting to touch on what they can truly become. Jerry mentioned this with Nato and about he started really coming on in practice, what I'm told, in about October of last year. Like, the light bulb started going on, and I'm not sure the flip has been switched off since. And that's why you're seeing him get so many first-team reps right now in practice. With DJ, he's still trying to make sure that he's doing the right things, etc. But he's so athletic. I mean, he's hyper athletic to be an offensive guard and 320 pounds or 330, whatever he is today. But I will say this much as it relates to versus Justin Blaylock and Casey Studdard, they're at least in the same category. They don't have to be better than that. They are, in my opinion, 2 future NFL players. And Texas hasn't had 2 future NFL guards playing at the same time in 15 to 20 years.
Who started opposite? I was trying to think who started opposite Derek Dockery at guard at Texas. I'm going to have to look that up. But Texas, that early in the MAC tenure, man, they had big time offensive linemen on that team. I'm trying to think of who started opposite.
Well, Leonard and Mike Williams were the tackles.
Yep, both went top.
Dockery was a guard.
Yep.
I'll
have to look back on the opposite starter on that.
Yeah, good question, Jerry. Derek Dockery was an amazing run blocker, by the way.
Yes.
Especially in power.
Yes.
And then we'll go just a couple more here. Let's do this one from King Me. How many games into this season before you get over the SEC honeymoon feeling?
10 years?
It won't be until after A&M, in my opinion. The last game of the year, because that's going to be a big one. I mean, people are already talking about that. I've been down in Austin walking around talking to different people, and a lot of people jacked about the A&M game. So I don't know if the honeymoon feeling will be over until, November 26th, something like that.
Yeah. By the way, Roger G's got a great question because it was such a message board video topic last year. Here's the reality, and we tried to say this last year. Sark always preferred Ryan Wingo. Just Micah Hudson was the big name in the state of Texas. So he was right.
I think he would have taken both, though. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I think he would have taken both for sure. But Wingo is the bigger guy. Both are going to be really good football players.
You know how much a head coach wants a player when he recruits him personally and does so through a coaching change, is what Steve Sarkisian did with Ryan Wingo last year.
I mean, when you say coaching change, you mean wide receiver position.
That's right.
Yeah. He stayed through them. It wasn't Andre Coleman or Brennan Marion or Chris Jackson, although they all had a role in that through the years. It was Steve Sarkisian starting in his junior year.
I mean, and the other thing was they literally Sark made Arch part of the recruitment of Ryan Wingo. I mean, there's some clear signs who was Sark's number one guy last year.
And then we have a super chat before we get to our last questions from Jay. Thank you, Jay. He says, Jerry, what camera do you use to get pictures and videos at practice?
This iPhone.
Simple as that.
That's not. Hey, I mean, CJ Vogel, he's better with he has a camera. I'm more just more the iPhone when I'm out there at high schools and whatnot.
All right. And then we'll go two more guys. Horns fan 224. Do you think the 2024 team could beat the 2023 team head to head?
Ooh, Bobby and I may differ on this.
I'd say no right now. Ask me through about game 7 or 8 in 2024.
I say, I mean, look, we got to see what happens with the spring portal. But I say yes. I think Texas is going to be a better team next year. Does that mean they're going to have a better record? I think they're going to play a tougher schedule next year.
What about the defensive tackles, Jerry? Right now.
Yeah, but I think I would take the Texas experience at offensive line next year versus Texas last year defensively on the defensive front. I like this offensive line a year older. If we're looking at that team versus this team, I think this Texas team matches up pretty well with that team.
And then our final
and a third-year starting quarterback versus 2.
I will agree with that. I think that's going to be a big piece.
Yeah, for sure. And then our final question today, and kind of along the same lines, almost in a way. Connor Vaughn says, would you consider a 9-3 record for the first year in the SEC a success or an underachievement?
Does it get you in the playoffs? Does 9-3 get you in the playoffs?
If your losses are to Michigan, Georgia, and a tough road game, yes, I do think it would. To me, the 9-3, I wouldn't say it's an underachievement if you get into a playoff. But the question is, who are the 3? For Texas fans, if your losses are Oklahoma, A&M, and Georgia, to me, it's kind of who you lose to if you're 9-3.
Good question to ponder on.
Got to beat Oklahoma this year. I'm looking at that schedule. Florida is going to be an interesting game, Jerry. We talk about them and their schedule and how crazy it is. But I'm telling you, if Derek Lagway starts playing they've got more talent than people give them credit for. They are not talentless. 9-3, I think, would be a slight disappointment. I do believe that. But entirely possible.
We'll see. Only time will tell, fellas. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it.
I want to say this, though. I'm on record, and I'm not being mean to Michigan or anything. I think Texas is going to beat Michigan next year. I think it's week 2, new starting quarterback. They're not void of talent, and neither was Alabama last year. But when the last year before the Alabama game, my overriding thought was you're not going into Tuscaloosa and feeling like you're going to get overwhelmed by Alabama's talent, especially on offense, like you did for about a 5-year period where you knew you had to score 40 points, like that, like the Joe Burrow team to win that game, right? And they had the firepower to do it. I ain't going in and playing Michigan similar. They got some really good defensive players, assuming all of them stay. But they're breaking in a new quarterback. They're replacing 6 offensive linemen who are all invited to the combine, a running back, right? Receiver Roman Wilson. They're replacing so much. It doesn't, and they've recruited well and they develop well. No different from Nick. Their recruiting rankings aren't as high, but they've developed well. They're going to be good on the defensive front, but you're not going to go in and feel like you can get overwhelmed offensively on the road by a team. That's when you have a real shot to beat somebody. To me, is you go in and you don't have to play your A+ game. You play your B+ game, your A- game. You can go win against Michigan next year because it's early in the season, and look at how much they lost. And a new coaching staff.
And
so I think Texas is going to win that game, which means 9-3 means they lose 3 SEC games. If you said 9-3, would it be an underachieve? I'm starting at 10-2, and we'll see what happens from there.
So it's what you started with last year.
That's right.
What you and I both started with last year and said similar things, and it ended up 11-1 regular season.
Okay, guys. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Coffee and Football presented by BKCW. We want to thank them along with Gooder and Manscaped and Chinook for sponsoring today's show. Thank you all for tuning in for the Super Chats, the great conversation. Be sure to head on over to ontexasfootball.com to further that conversation and to get all the latest news, notes, whatever else may be happening in the Longhorns world. And anything, guys, that people need to be aware of this weekend. Obviously, happy Easter, by the way, to everybody. Can't forget that. But anything that people should be on the lookout for.
Yeah, today at 1 o'clock, we're back with the live stream. Myself, Jerry, CJ Vogel. Rod is traveling back home, so he won't be with us this afternoon. And then tomorrow, we have the Saturday conversation, as well as something from CJ Vogel. He's going to be out at the Texas Relays and talking to a few recruits that are out there as well. That should be an interesting little give you some insight on some players and prospects, et cetera. And then we'll be following the Lady Longhorns as well, who go to battle tonight against Gonzaga. I believe that game starts at 9 o'clock. Is that right, guys?
Correct.
In Portland, by the way, which should mean it's a home game for Gonzaga, who's out of Spokane. So just keep that in mind. But we'll be back here soon, 1 o'clock today.
And if you haven't already, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. We would definitely appreciate that. Ring the bell so you're notified anytime and every time that we go live. And for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you Monday morning.